Hey y'all, welcome back to Andy's Little Homestead. Today I'm going to tell y'all a story. This is a story of how I built a business, and then I lost that business, and then I took a job, and then I burned myself out at that job, and then lived off of frozen hot dogs. It's a long story, but I think it's worth listening to. Might as well give you the backstory. As most of y'all know, I did 6 years in the Coast Guard, and after I got out, I got a job as a superintendent for a contractor. If you've been to the Dunkin' Donuts on Gum Branch Boulevard in Jacksonville, North Carolina, hi. One of the biggest problems that I had while I was in the Coast Guard, and also I found afterwards, is that I'm not very good at working for other people. You see, the problem is when you work for somebody else and they make decisions, and those decisions are bad ones, and you know that they're bad decisions, they make your life worse, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And damn it, if anybody's going to make my life worse, it's going to be me. So I lasted about 6 months at that job. It was right around the time my son was about to be born, and we made the decision that we were going to strike out on our own, and I was going to start my company. Figured I'd do construction because that's what I had a background in, though not every area of construction, but I sold every area of construction, and then figured out how to get it done after I sold the job. Things went well. I went from just me to me and about 6 guys in the first 6 months. I had a lot of good work pouring in. I knew how to sell the jobs, and I made a point of making sure that we did a good job for people. Sometimes business is just that simple. Here's the complicated part. As things started to grow, I didn't see any real end in sight. I didn't plan for the lean times, and it's been said before, but construction, it's feast or famine, dude. That's it. And I was in the middle of the feast, and I did not predict a famine. So we'd take on these big jobs, take, $30,000 siding job on a big house on the beach. So I'd buy a brand new set of pump jacks and everything that was needed to do the job. And I paid my guys, and I paid them well, and I paid my suppliers. We got the job done, and I'd do all that, and I'd find out that there was nothing left over for me. Maybe I didn't plan so good. It's okay, we'll get it on the next one. And the cycle just kind of repeated itself. So I had some months that were good. I had some months where I'd clear $10, $12, $15,000, and then some months where I worked for free. And that's not something that you can really fully appreciate how difficult that is until you've done it, until you've put in a hard month of work and you're like, I made $0 on that. It's part of the business, it's part of learning. I carried on, but it started to wear down on me a lot. It beat the hell out of me. And after a year and a half of doing this and struggling, it just got to be too much. I'm like killing myself. I was drinking then, and a lot, and we decided to call it. So I finished up the jobs that I had. Everything got done. Everybody got paid. And took the small amount of money that was left and moved back to Granville County, North Carolina. Figured I'd find a job. It was close to my parents, figure something out. I got me a house up in Oxford and started working for a insurance restoration company. Decent job. Pay was not great, but it had some upward mobility. The company was expanding, and it was a superintendent gig. So my job was basically just managing materials and subcontractors and dealing with the customers. I put everything that I had into it. I mean, I worked. If my boss was showing up at 7, I was showing up at 6. It was something that I was determined to make happen, and I started to see some rewards to it. About 5 months in, they promoted me to essentially production manager. So I had 3 superintendents working underneath me, and they were managing the jobs. At some points I had 60 to 75 jobs ongoing underneath what I was in charge of. It was as stressful as it sounds. I worked till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I really pushed, and it beat me up. And I got to drinking more. Things with my wife got worse. I never really saw our kids. My youngest was born, I believe, before we left, and And I wasn't around. My wife was just raising the boys on her own, basically. There was one Thursday evening where I came home from work. It was about 8 o'clock at night. And I realized that I had not seen my kids since Sunday when they went to bed and we were living in the same house. That was a big one. And it was tough because it was like, this is our fresh start. This is the new track, you know, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And it wasn't good. We were looking for a way out. So when we left Carteret County, I had owned the house there, and rather than deal with everything that goes into getting it sold, I didn't have that much equity in it. We just rented it out. Everything seemed cool with the tenants. It was like a middle-aged woman, her mom, and her grandma, you know. No wild parties. What could go wrong? Foreshadowing. Their lease came up, and they weren't going to renew. They were moving, and it all just kind of aligned like, look, you know, I bet I could figure something out. You know, I had no interest in going back to working for myself. That was as stressful as the job that I was in, and I just wasn't about to do it. I was like, well, we'll just find something else. So I talked to a few people. A friend of mine got me hooked up with a painting company who needed a foreman. Painting was my first trade. I painted for a commercial painting company in high school. That's what I know how to do. It's not the most glorious job in the world, but somebody's got to do it. Ain't nothing wrong with slinging a paintbrush. And, you know, as a foreman, I probably make okay money and at least keep the bills paid. So I talked to the guy, and he's basically like, yeah, man, you know, just let us know when you get down here and get settled, you know, give me a call and we'll get you to work. And I was like, okay, you know, things are looking up. We didn't have much money, and the little bit that we did have covered the U-Haul. Just packed all the stuff up and we headed back down there. So y'all remember that foreshadowing. We got back to the house. The tenants were gone. There was still a lot of stuff in the house. Not only was there a lot of stuff in the house was half destroyed. There was mold everywhere. There was the one bedroom that grandma was in. I don't think grandma could hold her bladder too well because it smelled like piss all the way through. And on top of that, somebody related to them was staying in a camper out back. Apparently he was supposed to be the one to get all the stuff together and get it moved, and that didn't happen. So I'm here with everything I own and my family and can't move back into the house. Okay, all right. So I called the law. Fortunately, I knew a few of the deputies from being on the fire department down there. Talked to them, let them know what was up. I may have had a few choice words when the owner of the camper arrived, but everything kind of worked out, I guess. You know, we got everything out of the house, and they dragged it off within a week. So it wasn't the end of the world. I called the guy that I was supposed to have a job with. I called him more than once, you know, and I heard nothing. It just completely ghosted. So we're back here. I didn't have any money. In fact, I stupidly let them use the security deposit as the last month's rent because I'm an idiot. They had always paid on time. I had no reason not to. That was a mistake. But that's where we were. I was 2 months behind on the mortgage. We had no money and no food. We were living off of, they had a big, like a 5-pound bag of frozen hot dogs that was left in the freezer. And that was a blessing. That was, it would have been a real problem if we didn't have that. So with no job and no prospects, and the electricity coming out of their name in like a week, we were in a spot. We moved back on a Tuesday, I believe. That Sunday, we went to church, just said hey to everybody, and started talking to this one lady. She needed a 2 storm doors put in. It was a $300 job. And I was like, well, you know, I can do that. I had no plans on starting a company again. So I can do that. So Monday, I took my tools, went to work, Put storm doors in. She was happy. Had $300 in cash, so we could get something to eat. Then a friend of mine from the fire department got up with me and said, "Hey man, I need a section of my roof patched. Is that something you could do?" And I was like, well, I was still looking for a job, but yeah, man, I got time. I'll handle it. So I did. Then from there, a client from Atlantic Beach, a former client, had heard that I was back in town and wanted a bunch of stuff on the interior of her house done. Some paint, some drywall work, moving a couple walls, a little bit of flooring. Hi, Sharon. So I did it. What was I going to do? I didn't have a job. And this just kept happening. And it got to the point where I'm like, I can't do this alone. So I ended up hiring the neighbor's kid. He's a 19-year-old Ukrainian kid. My neighbor married a Ukrainian lady, and he came, and he ended up being the best employee that I've ever had in my life. And y'all, things went better the second time around. I really watched my costs. I paid attention to the areas that I could trim, and I planned better, and it worked out. Over time, I stopped taking on everything and just kind of focused on exteriors. And then after Hurricane Florence, I just did straight roofs from there. Just nothing but roofs, because I knew what I was going to make before I showed up. That's why. And it worked out well. And I ran that company all the way up until my wife left me and I moved up here to follow her. That's another story y'all can scroll back and find. But I wanted to tell y'all this because there are plenty of times in life where you're going to be right there, where you are down to the bag of frozen hot dogs. And that's all you got. I may lose some people right here. Listener, don't. I'm telling you this from my own experience. I like to see what's coming. I like to know what's in the future, and I like to have a plan for it. I like to be covered and secure in the next 5 things that are happening. And if you've ever listened to the words of the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Give us this day our daily bread." Not give us this month our monthly ration of bread with plan for the next 3 after that. It's daily. And I've found that God has a way of meeting our daily needs. You might be right there at the end of the rope, but he'll give you just enough, and it'll work out. That concept never really landed with me until hearing a sermon recently. A guy was talking about doing mission work in Ghana, and how a large portion of the people working there are just working as day laborers. They'll go to a central location in the city or whatever, and hope they get picked, to make $1 or $2. And how that verse means a lot more there, because the concept of God supplying the daily needs is it's a lot closer to home when you live that way. Right now I'm blessed. My daily, weekly, monthly needs are met. I'd have to do some real screwing up to be in a bad spot next month. I'm happy for that, but it's not for never having been in the spot where the only thing you're hanging on by is a bag of frozen hot dogs. So that's my story. And I hope that it hits somebody. I hope that it is something that is a positive effect on somebody out there who's maybe struggling, who's in a spot. It's going to be okay. Get up. Go to work. If you don't have a job, go find some work. It'll be all right. As always, I hope y'all enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I love you. God bless. Some of y'all may notice that my face looks a little bit rounder. It's because I'm getting fat. It's too many frozen hot dogs.